My name is Audrey Dunning, and I'm a technology industry veteran and currently work as a business advisor. My experience really crosses hardware and software and consulting services. I was an operational leader in sales and a CEO of a consulting firm for many years. So maybe as Ian said earlier, that means I'm old. I'm not sure, but have certainly seen a lot of examples of innovation that's gone well and innovation that's gone bad sort of throughout my career. And I'm really excited about our discussion today. But before I introduce you to our esteemed panelists who are actually going to introduce themselves, I do want to share a few thoughts on the topic at hand. And the first is, as our group of panelists discussed on a call our topic, innovating in times of austerity, we kind of wrestled a little bit with the topic because is it a time of austerity or not? And, the reality is the companies represented here in the panel are all doing pretty well. They're growing. And kind of curious, folks in the room, raise of hands, are your companies growing and doing well right now today? I think you tend to see an overwhelming show of yes. So I think the question really is more about uncertainty versus austerity. These are unprecedented times of global uncertainty. We've gone through a global pandemic. We have the conflict in Ukraine. We have COVID lockdowns in China. Are we in a recession or are we not? Inflation is at all-time high here in the U.S. Since the 80s, which I remember, and across the globe. And what about interest rates? Are they going to continue going up, or is the Fed going to pause things in December? And what about the results of these midterm elections last night? What sort of impact is that going to have? So as we sort of brainstormed this topic, sort of this idea of uncertainty was really something that resonated with us more than really the concept of austerity. So I think that's a little bit of a theme that you're going to hear throughout our discussion today. Another point I wanted to emphasize is that we hope to share with you many examples of sort of practical innovation, things that are happening inside of our companies today. We all are familiar with great examples of disruptive innovation, Uber and others, and breakthrough innovation, SpaceX and reusable rockets to the moon, and even things we heard about this morning, right? Like I was so impressed hearing about, the idea of what's possible in nuclear power future. And for those of you who are maybe new to Pittsburgh, self-driving automation, Pittsburgh is the hub of that, really, around the world as a result of robotics technology that's come out of Carnegie Mellon. So many great examples of really innovative things. But I think what you're going to hear from the group today are ideas around innovation that are, really quite practical, pivoting to new markets, pivoting to new service offerings. How are we optimizing business processes? How are we doing more with less and saving costs? And I think all of those things are great examples of innovation that's sort of within our reach and our businesses and can be possible. Something that really resonated with me as Dr. Talabi was talking this morning in his talk about, he talked about form follows function as an important aspect of innovation. And I was thinking about my time when I was CEO of Summa Technologies and we were looking for new headquarters space. And so you talk to a commercial real estate agent, and the first question that they asked was, how much square foot do you need? And how many people do you have? And do you need 2 floors or 3? And, so that's just the way that business operates. You ask sort of that set of questions. And, my response and our team, and some of those members are here in the audience who worked on that project, was, I don't know. We were combining 2 locations into one. We were bringing together designers and developers under one roof. And what we really needed was a design thinking approach, an assessment of sorts to really understand what the needs and the workflow was for the business before we could answer some of those questions. So I started to think, and we ended up starting with an architecture and then engaging the commercial real estate brokers later, but I sort of thought like, gee, what a simple innovation for the commercial real estate business to think about a different way of offering and engaging with clients. Kind of that form follows the function, and that really hit home and resonated in a very practical way. So with that said, I would like to have the panelists introduce each other. And the other thing I just wanted to mention, we'd love to engage the audience. I know there's a lot of talented people here. I know we have several CIOs here in the audience, in addition to several that are on the stage here. So if you have thoughts or ideas that you would like to share with the collective group, don't hesitate to raise your hand. We'll bring a mic to you. And of course, we're going to have an opportunity to ask questions from the audience as well. So with all of that, I will start with Bill. Right. Please introduce yourself.
Yeah, and as long as you agree with everything you say when you ask questions, okay. I'm Bill Fortwangler. I am the CIO for Dollar Bank, coming up on 6 years. Can't believe it. Audrey and I know each other from that institution. Prior to that, I was the CIO at EDMC. Spent about 5 years there. Prior to that, I worked for a company called Fiserv, which is financial services. I've worked in chemical manufacturing, market research companies, startups. I've been around. I somehow keep getting sucked back into financial services, so which is not a bad thing to do. I'm here today just to learn from all of you also as much as I can relay information to all of you. So thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Hello, my name is Greg Wilson. I am the CIO for Centimark. Centimark is a specialty construction company. We focus on the commercial roofing and commercial flooring areas, so a little bit different than financial services. I've actually been at Centimark for, and I feel like an odd duck these days, for 3 decades. And so Mike and I were talking about, the amazing change in the technology landscape over that period. I mean, things are very, very different today. Easier in some respects, harder in others. So,
thanks. Hi. Thanks, everyone. Thanks for having me. Michael Janney. I'm the VP for industry advisors in the commercial space at Salesforce, covering manufacturing, auto, and energy. I am I don't know if I'm recovering or a former CIO as well. So having watched the technology landscape move and innovate, and this is a great topic, right? Innovation on leveraging technology in particularly in these times. So I'm really looking forward to it. Thanks for having me.
Great. So yeah, as you can see, we have a very wide cross-section of industry representation on the panel today, which is awesome. So I think the first question we wanted to kind of kick things off with is, sort of looking forward, what do you see as the most important area of focus for, I'm going to say, both your industry and your company, because those might be, two related but different ideas as we move into 2023. So maybe we'll just start with Bill and go down the line on this one.
Yeah, from a employee perspective, just automation. We are still, we joke a lot that we were formed in 1855 and we're still doing things that way. And it's true in some cases. Our CEO jokes about it. So we have such an opportunity to automate. And you might ask, okay, you've been there 6 years. Why haven't you done that? We had other things to clean up and do, but we are really focusing this year on leveraging the software and tools we have to further use the automation that's in those packages, but also going out and getting a Blue Prism or some other automation tool, as well as some of the integration platforms we're looking at that also have automation tools in them. So many, many repetitive tasks that employees are just so used to doing that when you approach them and say, you realize we could automate this, they're not even thinking of it. They're just so used to doing the paper pushing and the interjection of things. So that's one thing from an efficiency of an employee standpoint. From a customer-facing standpoint, we need to up our game from our, what people like to call the digital channels, right? I had my phone here, but to do everything possible banking-wise on here. We are still not there. We are not just competing with a community bank down the street or a Clearview Credit Union. We are competing with Chase, Bank of America, all of them. Because I have about 9 different banks, and that's because I'm CIO. So I will open accounts at different banks just to see what happens, how easy it is An embarrassing thing, right? We were looking for a new chief digital officer and we had somebody go and open up a new account, and she was like, "This is horrible. It's horrendous." And I said, "That's why we're hiring you, right? To improve that situation, especially through the pandemic, right? You weren't allowed to go into a branch, so people had to rely on these more and more, and also the demographic of our industry." Of our particular demographic, right? It's aging, and the younger folks, and I even consider myself sort of young. I don't want to go into a branch ever. I want to do everything here. So improving that customer experience, not just being able to do it, but being able to do it in 3 minutes. For example, Capital One, I opened a credit card a few months ago. It was unbelievable, the experience. I swear to God, it was like in less than 3 minutes. I had an account number. I had everything I needed, whereas you try to do that with us, it's not there yet. So that's what our focus on, to compete with any bank anywhere, because it doesn't matter where your bank is these days.
Just a quick follow-up to that, Bill. Anything sort of in the broader industry, financial services industry, you might comment on that's on your radar?
In the broader industry, just integration. It used to be you had your core banking platform and you were all containerized. Now there are so many fintechs out there, as they're called, and neobanks. What's a neobank? Something like Chime, which really it's not a real bank. Behind Chime is a real bank selling their services to process them, but they advertise that, hey, get paid 2 days early, blah, 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 and all these fancy things that people fall for. We have to be able to integrate to all these other fintechs and the services they're offering. How many use Zelle or Venmo, right? So think of that as a fintech. That's not our offering. You can Zelle money from within our world, but we had to integrate to that, and we have to keep that integration going.
Great. Greg, how about you?
Sure. I'll start with the broader industry. So within construction, I think you're seeing a pretty rapid adoption of visual and spatial technology. So a drone flight, measurements, analysis, a lot of visual AI, and it's applicable in a variety of spaces, on the pre-sale side, on the delivery side. For us specifically, we're trying to, like Bill said, we're trying to figure out how to integrate some of these technologies, how to pass data that we're not used to acquiring into a system that really doesn't want it. So there are really bridge challenges there. Also, how do you turn around? We're a little bit, Centimark is a little bit unique in that we're not a classic sort of someone posts an RFP, or we're bidding in a kind of a classic bid in by 4 o'clock. We have a fairly large sales team, and we're selling into large property owner, property management organizations. So how do we take some of these newer technologies and how do we turn a product that really has no sex appeal, no buyer gratification, and make it something really interesting and innovative?
I'm going to go for the broader manufacturing ideas. And I think some of that is if organizations, execs that I'm speaking with, they're looking at prior, we'll call it a downturn, right? Because we're not really sure what's happening. And how do they tighten the belt? To both the points that Greg and Bill have made, how do they get more efficient with individuals that they currently have? Or, Rajiv was talking earlier on the last session, like they can't hire people, right? What does onboarding look like? So it's really focusing in on those areas, I think, is what we're going to see, and what we are beginning to see going into 23 is the efficiencies. And a lot of that has to do with integration. Being around technology forever, that's always been, we used to, 10 years ago, we talked about data being the gold, right? Well, it still is, but 10 years ago, the tools that were out there really didn't make it easy. And we're starting to see some of these other tools that are coming out. for that integration piece in particular, to be able to make it look seamless, that customer experience. And I think that's an area that we're going to see in 23 beginning to change
MuleSoft
even more.
people in the audience, I think you got some prospects here. So, maybe a follow-on question for Michael, just for you. Salesforce.com is often recognized as one of the most innovative companies in the world, and Mark Benioff is recognized for one of the most innovative CEOs. Anything happening inside of Salesforce in terms of innovation priorities that you might share with the group?
I think we've seen some of it, right? We just announced Auto, not to get into product names, but we just launched Auto Cloud. And I think that innovation is really coming from our customer base, because it's not, Salesforce doesn't sit around with a think tank of, manufacturing execs or auto execs. We ask the customers. So what are the customers looking for? FinTech is a great example. It's one of our healthiest verticals, and it stemmed from innovating from asking the customers, hey, what do you need? Did the same thing several years ago with manufacturing solution. It's, what are you looking for? What doesn't your back office mess do for you today that we can help with? So that's really where Salesforce innovates, is by looking at what the customers are asking for, and then continually innovating this 3 times a year on the new asks from the customers, and just continuing to innovate that way.
Thank you. Any follow-on questions from the audience on that particular topic? Anyone would like to ask? Comments, thoughts? Okay, right here. Dan.
I think the integration's very interesting aspect. I'm in the logistics business. What I'm doing is, with the team, we're integrating with a lot of third parties. What it does is it gives me an opportunity to leapfrog and do a lot of things, and then I can potentially backfill some of that and build it in-house. Just because I integrate now doesn't mean that long-term that I need to do that integration. I can save costs, and I can learn how maybe a solution that's provided by a third party, how I can build that in-house and do it better, and tighter integration with what I need for solutions. So just a comment.
And you control your own destiny on the roadmap or what you want to build too.
Completely, but whenever you do these integrations or you're contemplating doing them, you inevitably get the sales guy coming up to you and it's like, let's build versus buy. But you want to spend all the money with us, or a little bit of money, and you don't need to worry about maintenance and upkeep, and we'll take care of that, or do you want to build it yourself, and that's a headache? I'm going to go most of the time with build, right, and we'll build the solution, but the easy entry is the integration. Just get it up to speed, make sure it's almost like proof of concept in place, right? These guys done it, they're tracking a shipment or something. I can create an app to track a shipment, so I'm going to take that route long term.
Great, thank you for that. So let's move on to another question. We talked about this idea of unprecedented uncertainty, and what are some of the headwinds that might be ahead of us? So I think I would ask our panel, how are you thinking about the headwinds that might be ahead, and what are you doing to prepare for what you think that might be? Is it business as usual? Are you accelerating things? So what's changed in terms of, as you think about this uncertainty in the environment?
Yeah, and one thing we all need to get used to, if you haven't already, when are you ever certain of something, right? I think the last few years have just been a little bit overboard and over the top with pandemics and wars and resignations and everybody wanting to work from their home in their pajamas and so forth. So it's a little more, but you hardly will ever have that comfort level, at least you shouldn't, of what's around the corner, right? When I got the dollar bank, there was a little bit of corporate arrogance about, hey, we've been around since 1855. And then I brought up Radio Shack and Sears and Roebuck and listed a whole bunch of companies that are no longer around. And if we don't innovate, if we don't pay attention to our market, our demographics and so forth. So what we're doing, we're dealing with a workforce that really wants to have a hybrid work model. So we are flexible. We are accommodating that. Some people want to go over the top and be 100% remote. We are not doing that, because one of the items I've noticed, our first year, 2020, was phenomenal with everybody. But remember, at the end of 2020, there was nothing to do after work. You weren't allowed to go outside. You couldn't go to a restaurant. So 2021 is when we started noticing a decline in productivity or misses in collaboration, communication, breakdowns, operational incidents, and so forth, just because we weren't all there. And believe me, I never want to go to the office 5 days a week. It seems lately I have been, but I never want to go back to that full 5-day-a-week thing. So dealing with that right now, and where is it going to end up? Where's it going to settle? We feel like we're going to settle in a hybrid capacity going forward. In fact, we are renovating one of our office spaces, and we are building it out to be more focus rooms, collaboration rooms, hoteling, not everybody in a little cubicle when you're assigned. And even then you have to deal with, well, I don't want to sit there because Greg gets dirty at lunchtime, right? I don't want his germs around me. So you're dealing with all these different scenarios where you can't please everybody, but the uncertainty of where you're going to end up from a workforce perspective. The other thing about where are we going to end up with interest rates, right? Us older people, like I remember when I bought my house in 1989, my mortgage was 10 3/8. You go back to the 70s, they were probably in the teens. I remember my grandfather had CDs at rates in the teens. So are we done with that? No. The thing about financial services is we actually do benefit from higher interest rates, but we benefit also when rates are so low and everybody's refinancing their mortgages. Nobody's refinancing a mortgage right now, and hardly anyone's buying a home. So it's this balancing act that you got to constantly stay in front of and pay attention to, because the uncertainty, even we get past the war and the pandemic and everything. Look, if things were that certain, I'd go buy XYZ stock right now and retire in a year.
Great points. How about you, Greg?
Yeah, it's Bill brought up a good point, and I've been thinking about it a little bit. But despite the uncertainty that's in the climate all around us, innovation is really a competitive landscape, right? Your business isn't, you're competing with new fintechs. We're competing with hundreds of other construction companies. So even when you are facing some degree of uncertainty, you still have to be really focused on how to drive more, how to drive change, whether it's a small change that has a significant impact or something highly innovative and challenging. I'm personally finding that, the business's appetite to accomplish more, to stay ahead of the next guy, it hasn't diminished at all. So, we talk about those things as an organization. Maybe we might scale back some capital projects, but we're, even in uncertainty, that pressure to do things tomorrow that you aren't doing today, is really pretty consistent, right? So,
awesome point. I mean, I think the interest rate is a great example. Figuring out what is next, right? Doing what you can. I think those are really the key areas. I think when you look at the labor aspect, and I'll go back to focus on manufacturing for a bit. Talking with execs, they can't fill positions, and they haven't been able to for 18, 24 months. So the conversations we're having with them now is how do I leverage technology, whether it's Salesforce or some other technology, how do I leverage technology because I can't hire those people? And if I were going to go hire someone, that's an OpEx. So a software license is an OpEx, whether it's us, Boomi, Bill and I were talking about Boomi earlier. But you can capitalize some of that from the investment aspect of it from the project. And those are the conversations. It's how do I do more with less? I can't hire the people. So what does that look like? And making those incremental steps, right? Not trying to boil the ocean in one fell swoop. It's, you were talking about integration. Okay, well, let me solve that problem today. And, Dr. Sola this morning was talking about it. Super complex problem, especially the supply chain from a logistics perspective. Super complex problem. How do we make it easy? And what Greg's also alluding to, right, is that customer experience. It's what does that look like? How can I be better at that in a supply chain problem? I'll go back to the logistics and the whole supply chain from manufacturing. How do I help with that? How do I create visibility? Integration, it's the only way it's going to happen. How do I create visibility into what's going on, what was ordered, what the lead time is, what the production time is, and really helping that user experience. And when I say the user experience, the customer experience, I'm also referring to the internal, the CDO, right, that Bill's trying to hire. Horrible experience. Well, right, that's the reason we're trying to hire you, or did hire you. I'm not sure which.
Not yet. No.
Because it's solving that, right? It's solving that experience is really going to be part of the differentiator as we move into 23 and keep moving forward. And that's not going to go away.
So maybe a follow-on question to that, and I think at least Greg, you touched on it, and it's really around urgency. Are you seeing an increased sense of urgency for innovation inside of your organization, and why? So Greg, you mentioned the business, can't get things fast enough. Like, what is driving that in your company? Is it the competitive desire?
Yeah, Andy Groves, the founder and chair, I don't know if he was founder, but certainly a longtime chair of Intel, wrote a book called Only the Paranoid Survive. And I think it's a lot of that sense, especially from the pre-sale side of our business. I mean, every salesperson, not a slant against salespeople, but every salesperson is looking to gain every advantage they can, right? So there are innovative ways to present a product, present a service to a customer that brings it to life. For a long time, our presentation was literally like 8 pages of text. This is what we're going to do. And we had customers that were familiar with us would say, I don't need that. Just give me the price page. And so what we're trying to do is visually tell a story about our value, how we're going to install this incredibly boring roof that's better than someone else. And so it's a challenge. It really is for our sales team. And so I think that's where a lot of our investments are going. And it's that fear among that stakeholder, pre-sale stakeholder group, that someone else is going to do that better. And so, we're looking to not only compete, but we're looking to lead.
So that's really great. So you're talking about customer expectations
Right.
and how that's driving urgency in the business, because customer expectations are higher with respect to turnaround times and digital and business processes and so on. Anyone else have thoughts on that they'd like to share here around kind of the urgency point?
I have a question for everyone. Where have all the people gone? Where have all the candidates gone? And anybody know?
They're home.
Part of that.
So we see our company basically, we post all the positions, and then when the people apply, what we're actually doing at this point is we do something called Culture Index. I don't know if anybody's heard of that, but it's kind of based off of Predictive Index. It's from the founders of that. It's very interesting stuff. It's a good tool. I would never use it as a weapon. But it seems that what recruiting's telling me, why I'm not seeing the positions getting filled that I have open for my department, is when they're seeing that, 80% of the people drop off. Like, they're not interested in filling out a survey to tell us what their work behavior is like. Mm-hmm. So, just a comment.
I'm going to add on to that because I've seen it several times to where, especially today, the younger generation is looking for they're looking for that experience. They're looking for that customer friendly experience as if they're buying something off Amazon. And I talked with a CEO a couple weeks ago where he actually has had 3 bona fide recruits make it through like the 3rd phase of conversations, and then start interviewing them as much as they're being interviewed, and withdraw their applications because they're like, I don't care if you're from 1800 something, I'm not going to do this on pencil and paper. It's just not going to happen. And I think that's where some of the, we just talked about where are all the people. Yeah. I think that's part of it. They're just declining. If the experience isn't there up to par, then they're just saying, no, I'm out. I'll go find something else. And I don't know about all the subsidies and everything else, but another person I spoke with basically had a candidate come in and tell them what the hourly rate was going to be. It was the candidate telling, and like, well, where are you coming up with that number? Like, well, that's what I'm getting from subsidy. So if you can't give me more than that, then I don't need a job. So, but I think that may have dried up. I'm not sure. Who knows?
Yeah. So, given just to follow on to that, the challenges with talent and hiring talent, you still have work that you need to get done. Lots of innovative projects. In particular, this is probably for Bill and Greg. You guys are CIOs managing work. How are you getting things done in terms of supplementing talent with third parties? And, how are you thinking about your talent pool with respect to what you need to execute the work?
Yeah, you have to have a good pipeline of vendor relationships with different types of labor that you may need, whether it's contracted, augmented, which is strictly contract labor for doing some development or quality assurance or something. And you also need a good pipeline of professional services, meaning these are SMEs, they have a better skill set than your team, they're available for implementation work, troubleshooting work after the fact. You have to go out there and really have a pipeline, and it's not just one company, because they may not have the resources available for the time frame you need them. So we're doing a lot of that, because the other issue we have, all the people that started in 1855 are now retiring. So Dollar Bank, when I got there, traditionally they kind of even warned me, hey, your IT staff, here's your median age, and I'm like, whoa. So we've been dealing with people retiring and replacing them or not replacing that role, automating the role. So my staff has actually been shrinking over the last 5 to 6 years, just finding opportunities and so forth. But that in the model of the different label, even from an offshore perspective, the Dollar Bank would never look at an offshore contingent. We have that capability now, where if we need to ramp up on a certain project and so forth, we have those companies in our wheelhouse also, because you never know what's going to happen. The retirements, the resignations, whatever is going on for that particular project that you need to ramp up, you got to have that pipeline and network within your worlds to do that.
Greg, you have some thoughts to add?
Yeah, I would totally echo Bill's comments that, as much as you value and try and care for the team members that really go above and beyond, the difference makers within your organizations, you have to really have a skills augmentation, a partner network, and really, just like hiring a new employee, you have to go through a similar process, right? You don't know whether or not this partner, they may have a great presentation and they may have done great work here or there, but that doesn't mean they're going to be successful in your organization. So I frankly feel like the partner network really becomes a critical extension of our own capabilities. There's many projects that we wouldn't even think about, don't have the capacity without bringing in, high-level skills, come in, assist us with this, and then, we can take it from there. So generally, our internal resources, while they do like to do new development, and we don't, we want to feed that, We also are probably more focused on the day-to-day, supporting the day-to-day operations of the business, and letting our partners who have generally deeper, richer, more diverse skills come in and assist us to get the ball over the goal line. Something the Steelers have been failing at us recently.
I was just going to comment on. Go ahead, Michael. You go ahead. I was just going to add that I know we have a number of technology kind of vendors and providers in the audience, and I was just curious. I bet they would want to hear your thoughts on when you go to look for those partners. What are some things, qualitatively and quantitatively, that you look for in a good partner? Yeah, go ahead, Greg.
I feel like a lot of it's the same in an employee hire. I mean, obviously, you're looking for good communication, but really, I think their value as a partner becomes evident over time through projects. I don't think there is a finite set of questions or actions or things that they do or can do in an initial presentation. References are super valuable, but I think their real the depth of their skills will again reveal themselves in time.
Yeah, and I'll add to that you need to build relationships with these companies because when times go badly, poorly, you need to be able to rely on them to step up. I'll give you an example. We were doing a mock bank conversion over this weekend, and one of the professional services resources kind of disappeared for a few hours, and we needed him on a Sunday afternoon. So I called the owner, who I know both the owners very well, and right away they were like, this isn't good. They knew it was me. I've had a relationship with them for probably 10 years. So they know the expectations of me and vice versa. Now, sometimes that doesn't work out based on performance of the employees doing the work or just a relationship with that particular principal of the company or for whatever reason. The other thing you need to manage is, in your eyes, in your perception, this vendor may be performing extremely well, but in the business's eyes, they're not. That's another management aspect of your staff augmentation, right? That they did something you don't know about, or there was a misunderstanding from the business of what they were supposed to be doing. So that's another aspect of managing that relationship. But with my success with all these vendors, I just had a very long relationship. I'm friends with some of them now. I mean, they come to my house for dinner and vice versa. I go golfing with them, not talk about work. So you just build those relationships over time, and then you end up repeating business with them.
I think you had a comment earlier. I want to get back to you.
Yep. Thank you. We're here right at Hike 2, right? I think this is a great. There's a partner right there, right? When both of you were talking about, because I, put my CIO hat back on and like internal projects and resources and what do I do? And I think that's where, a partner like Hike 2 can come in and start augmenting that, right? And then turn it over. I think that's another great value, because now you don't have to have that internal resource focused on it, but you may have to need, you may need an internal resource for the longevity of it, and to be able to fill in, but then leverage like a Hike 2 to really fill that gap as you're moving forward with some of these innovation projects.
Great, thank you. What else? What's on your mind? I think we have time for some questions.
I'll ask one.
Dan, go for it.
We have innovation, right? We said we talk about listening to the business or listening to the market. That's really going to drive innovation. But curious about, we also know that innovation happens from the shop floor, right? And maybe, things that you've done to cultivate, the innovation at that shop floor level, and then to drive that through the business.
Yeah, I'll start. So my IT staff is fairly small, where I'm at now, 150 people. So I get a chance to talk with everybody, and I like to do that. I rotate through one-on-ones with all of them through the year. So obviously a lot of people to talk, but from them, like you say, at the shop floor is what I hear about some of the stupid things we're doing that nobody is taking initiative above them to change. They may have mentioned it to their direct manager or not, and I'll follow up with the direct manager. They may have a better explanation than what that person has of why we couldn't change it, but I like to hear from them of why are we doing this? And a lot of times I didn't know we were doing that, and we really shouldn't be. And how many of you have heard the old, well, we always did it that way, right?
100 times.
Right. You can't go by that. You got to think, do a little research. Maybe it has to be that way, but examining down at all levels of the IT organization has helped me try to innovate and change some of what they're doing day to day to help them out.
I'm gonna jump on the we've always done it this way. So prior to joining Salesforce about 4 years ago, I was a customer for about 8 years and drove a business transformation throughout I was one of the partners of a manufacturing company, and I did exactly what Bill was talking about. Went around from plant floor perspective, operations, and whether IT was ever involved or not, just asking questions and simple things to innovate. Like from a production, so we mined and processed clay, and just from a production perspective, they had an Excel spreadsheet that every morning they would print out 10 copies of it, and they would literally take a pencil and they'd write down the production numbers on this piece of paper. And I laugh when you said that, because I said, well, why are we doing it this way? Well, we've always done it this way. Like if one more person says we've always done it this way.
Yeah.
But it was, looking at how can I create a simple solution to help that plant floor person who doesn't want to have that piece of paper, doesn't want to carry it, and move to them it's newer technology. Some of them want to adopt it, some don't, but, leveraging a tablet and just putting in the numbers right on a tablet. And now it's right there, it's in the system. So little baby steps like that. And really, Bill nailed it. It's talking to the individuals that are doing the daily, day-to-day. Those in the trenches, not 3-4 layers up, because they don't really know what that person does in the trenches to do their job 8-10 hours a day.
Anything to add, Greg?
I think all of these are, and it came up earlier in a conversation, but it's the voice of the customer, whether that be an external customer or an internal customer. And your channel to hear that voice can be really, really different. But one of the things that has struck me is as feedback comes from the organization, I think sometimes in IT we have this like grandiose, red cape, S on the chest kind of vision of what innovation is. But the user community will go, well, I know we're doing this, but could we make this change? And, it's like, well, that's such a nothing thing to us, but you execute, and you have had significant impact with virtually no effort. And it's almost, I don't know if you feel embarrassed or shocked or whatever, but there are many, many opportunities like that. Again, whatever the channel is, but if you are listening to your customers, the people you're supporting, I think those things will bubble to the surface.
And then they continue to grow, right? Like I think Mike and Rajiv were talking about it, to where now it's like they're almost insatiable. Like, can you change this? Can you change that?
Right.
Like, well, time out. Now a COE needs to be made and developed, and you need to vet all of those, because one change, whether it's ERP, CRM, it doesn't matter what it is. One change impacts others within the organization. But that's what you get, is you get that hunger for those ideas that no one would have thought of further up. And it's a simple change, to Greg's point.
Right, and time permitting, we had a whole other theme of questions about how do you budget for innovation initiatives, CapEx or operating expenses, and how do you measure business value and ROI, and maybe that's next year. So I think we're out of time. Thank you to the Hike 2 team for having me moderate. Thank you to our panelists.